Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to take a look at the November release for Nintex forms for Office 365. So if you're not familiar with release notes for Nintex, you come to community.nintex.com and you go to knowledge base and you click on release notes. You'll see all the release notes for all our products. So once that opens up, you'll see there's a section for Nintex for Office 365, and down here we've got Nintex forms for Office 365, and this will show you release notes. Now, as you'll notice, we've got the November release. The top two are things for Nintex Mobile. So the user profile function now supports Nintex Mobile, or is supported in Nintex Mobile, and also related task form attachments are supported. So that means if you've got a start form with attachments and you want to display those in a task form in new responsive, they will now appear. So the start form attachments appear in the task form in new responsive, and then if you also have that in Nintex Mobile, that task new responsive task form, those attachments will also appear as well. The third item we've got here is quite exciting to a lot of people. The lookup function is now available in new responsive, so that will allow you to look up information from other lists through a function. Now, it doesn't support every column type, but we felt it was still quite usable to a lot of people, so they can still look up string and number, different columns like that. More complex objects, which are what SharePoint puts multiple properties on, like the people picker and lookup and manage metadata, they are to come in a phase 2, but at least you can still look up simple data types in the lookup function today. And the final one is the ability to support default value for the people picker control. So previously, if you wanted to set the default value of a people picker, you had to do a rule. Now you just have to go to the config panel of the control. So let's jump across to here. So I was just building a form here. It's around the hazard report. So I've got the manager field here. And what you'll notice here is we've now got default values. So what this basically does is I've got the user profile lookup function here. So if I can go on a user profile lookup, and you can have this in here. So your user profile lookup, you put the context of the current user, or it could be any user you want. It could be another people picker if you wanted to. You could pass that value in here, and you're going to look up the property of that user object. Now, if you're not familiar with that, have a search for user profile properties for Office 365. There's a bunch of documentation around that. What we're basically doing is saying, with the current logged in user, get their manager. So we jump across to a form here. So this is something I was working on before. So if we just refresh this, and what it's going to do is going to look at the form is going to open. It's going to look to see who's currently logged on, and that's Ewan, and it's going to come in and check and find out that Al is actually my boss. So as we see here, it's pre-populated with my boss. So if we jump across, so that's what that profile, that function does. But as you can see, it's just setting that with the default value, so you don't need a rule anymore. So coming back to the release notes, the second thing we had was the lookup function. So if I jump back to here, what we can do is, let's say this is a lookup function here, and what we can do here, so it's looking up a bunch of sites. So if I come to here, the hazard report, now this has got a bunch of sites. It's a lot of sites in here, and actually jump across to here. Let's open that up in a new tab. So if I go to my project sites, there's a lot of projects in here. It's just dummy data that I made in here, and there's a lot of items in here. So I want to perhaps display the state when someone selects a site, for instance. So what I could do here is come through, and I would put label control under here. Do is to say state, and then I can do a function. So go insert, and I'll create a variable. And now if you go to functions, to lookup, we should have 3. So we've got the lookup, the pass lookup, and the user profile lookup. So what I want right now is the lookup. Now what's going to happen though is it's going to actually pass the complex object of the lookup function. So what we might do before we jump ahead to that, we might just come in here and say, well, what does the lookup, what does this control pass to me? So, so let's say sites control selected output. So let's go and have a look at that. So let's go and say insert, say form controls and sites. So we'll insert that first, and we'll come back to doing what we need to do around this. So we'll go publish, jump across to our other form here. This is our one's published. Okay, so go across to here, refresh. Okay, so we can see the sites control selected output is nothing, so nothing's been selected yet. So once we select something, we'll see that it actually has, this is what is stored in SharePoint. This is what I meant by complex objects are something that has two pieces of data in it. It's got an ID, and the semicolon hash is the delimiter that SharePoint uses, and then it's got the value. Now what we want to do is just grab the ID. And so what we can do is come back to here, and we could say pass lookup. I'm going to say true. This will make more sense in a moment when I show you what happens. And we're going to pass lookup false. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to say, I wanted to put a function here. I'm going to say, well, new variable. I'm going to say lookup true. Doesn't matter what it's really called. We go pass lookup, and what we need to do, pass lookup to make sure I've got the syntax right, is the lookup value. And so what that means is we need to pass in the sites control. So we'll go on and pass that in, and then what we can do is we can either say true or false. So if we come to what happens here is if you put true in the formula, the form that lookup text value is Australia. So true means to just give me the value. If I put false, it's going to give me the ID. So I'm going to output both of those so we can see what it's like. So we're going to say true, and then we can go insert. I might open that one up and just be lazy and just copy that. So if you wanted to do that, you can also do that yourself as well. Be lazy if you want to. And let's call it pass lookup. All about saving time. Okay, so now we've got the true and the false, and state we still haven't got to yet. We'll come to in a minute. So we're going to publish that, wait for that to publish, and then we'll come across to our form and we'll see what the output looks like. And you'll see this sort of building up over time. Okay, so go to our form, we'll press refresh. Okay, so nothing in the output, nothing in pass lookup for true, nothing in pass false, and we still haven't used that for a function yet. So I'm going to select village lane. And as we see here, here's the raw output of that control. It's just giving me the value that's stored in that control. Now what you see here then is the pass lookup is actually just grabbing components of this string. It's either saying, give me the ID. Now, do I want the text or the value? So false, it just gives me the ID, or true gives me just the text, so I can come down to something else. Cardinal Lane. And again, you can see 9 Cardinal Lane is the address, or 75 is the SharePoint list item ID. Now that's useful because now what we want to say is, well, I know I've got 9 Cardinal Lane, but what I actually want to know is the state that it's in. So I'll come back to my form. Now I need to do then is a lookup function. So we're going to do our lookup function, lookup to get state. So then we have lookup. And we're coming into here to make sure we've got the syntax right. And what we've got here is the list name. So the list name we need to jump across to is project sites. So I'm going to grab that. Do some quotation marks, project sites. And then we're going to say filter column name. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, I'm going to want to filter on the ID. And then it's going to say, well, what's the filter value? So which ID you're going to pass in. So you're going to pass in a value, and it's going to go into this column, into this list. So what am I going to pass in? I'm going to pass in the pass lookup because we want to get that just that ID. Remember we did that before. So we need to say the controls. We need to say sites. It's false. Then we can say that's done, and what column do we want out of this? So this is quite a complex function, as you can see. So just to break that down, so the lookup, we're looking up to the project sites. We're going to filter on the ID column, and the specific item we're looking for is the one with the ID of this, the return function we had before, and then what other piece of data do we want, which is state. So if we come across to here, what we're saying is look up to this list, and we want the state, and we know that this has got an ID of 1, for instance. So hopefully we've got this right, and we'll go and create and insert that. And let's see how we go. So I'm going to publish that. So if that didn't make any sense, try and build up. First you want to say, well, what's the output of this control? Then what's the output of if it's true? Then if it's false, and that's the ID that we're passing into the lookup state. So let's see if I've actually got this right. And this is always a test to see. Okay, nothing in any of these yet. I'm going to select something a bit random so it's not just number 1. Union Plaza, and then we see, so we've got 93 is the ID, this is the address, then we break out just the address, and then we've got the list, the SharePoint list item ID, we pass it in, and we see we've got Tennessee. So if I go to 2874 Union Plaza, hopefully we can actually see we've got the right one. I go to Union. There yet? Go on. Plaza. No. Which one? Still loading, is it? Get a few. Go. 2874 Union Plaza, Tennessee. So let's now set the one before. So let's say 15640. 15640. Oops, gone too far. Should be the one before it. Okay. And Florida. So there you go. So that's the user profile. Sorry, that's the lookup function with the pass lookup. It's quite a complex piece of functionality, but as you can see, it gets quite powerful. So then what we might want to do is might say, okay, now we've figured out all this other stuff, and then you can start reusing this. You can reuse this function because now you've got your base sort of template going. You might say, I want the project manager. So I'm going to say I'm going to get the project manager, and so we'll go and project manager. You kind of know where this is going, but we'll still build this anyway. So we'll go the pass up to get state. So we'll kind of be a bit lazy here, and we'll copy this because why? I'm going to build it by hand when we can just copy and paste it. Say project manager. Get project manager. Okay, create and insert. Let's see how that works. Okay, jumping across to here and press refresh. So we've cleaned up all those other variables we were sort of testing with and trialing out. So now we can see here, no state, no project manager. So I'll come through to here, select Sloan Avenue, and here we see here, California's coming through, the project manager is Carolyn. So as you can see here, this is the dynamic choice, and then you're just pulling back more information. So that's enough about the lookup function. Hopefully you find that useful. Now the final thing I want to show you is if you've been playing around with the new responsive designer for Office 365, what you might have also noticed is if I select, let's say, this group control, something better, say the risk assessment. So what we've got here is we've now got styling options. So you can see at the bottom styling options. So I can actually change the color of this control, as you can see here. I go to preview. It's got a risk assessment. It's got a slight, that border color has changed, and that was new in the release, and this is something we're just trialing at the moment, so a lot of you will actually have access to this and be great to have your feedback on it. You can also change the background color of the, it's a little bit hideous, of the group control as well, and as you can see here, it's got a bit of it's 50% tint on the background color of the panel. So this is good if you want to highlight specific sections for maybe for specific reasons, or just make something stand out a bit more. Now what you could also do is you come back and you go to your risk assessment, so let it that yet, and you can go back and reset to the global style, so it's just back to normal. Now there are two of the options here, and these have come in line with our style improvements we've been putting through here. So phase one of our styling improvements was to clean up this panel here, where we've changed a lot of our styling options. Then the phase 2 is what you saw, which is this coloring section of different controls. So this is the panel control, or you could actually change the colors of a lot of the fields as well. But then the third option, which we're trialing with a lot of users, is let's say if someone's been given a red yellow card, so red yellow card issued. So if the check red yellow card issued is yes, then what we can do is I forgot to check the group, the panel group name. So I've got to come through here. The assessment, sorry, and it's the risk assessment group. So I might just call that group so I know where it is. Then I've got to go back to rules and actually just change this temporary. So if I go to red yellow card risk assessment group, and so you can now change the background color, the border color as well. So I could say the background color. I'm going to actually say, look, this is a fairly important thing I want them to highlight. So I'm going to make that sort of red, and then if otherwise, if the red yellow card is not issued, then the risk assessment, where it's gone, background color is back to the default style. So let's now go and check that out. We're going to create that rule. We're going to check this out. So I'm going to preview. I'm doing my risk assessment, and someone's been given a red yellow card issued, then the whole section turns red. Now obviously one of these colors, the text is a little bit different and those sort of things, and so you come to the style builder and you probably change your colors through there, but you get the idea. We could probably make that a little bit softer, wanted to, so coming through here, making that just a slight different color so people know that there's something that's not quite right, so they really need to go and fill that out. So there you can see there. So that's one functionality that isn't in the release notes, but it's just something we want people to test out, see how you feel, what the functionality, how you find the functionality, and certainly give us that feedback. So hopefully you found these features useful. Let me know in the comments, or reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter or on my email, and I'd love to hear your feedback. Thanks.